right, happy 2021. Welcome back to the first episode of First Person Shoot for this year. We are delighted to welcome Mr. Stephen Carey. Stephen,
Hello.
how are you?
How are you? Not too bad.
How is 2021 treating you so far?
A bit of a mixed bag, but generally pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy enough. It's been a year of big adjustments, but yeah, getting there.
So Stephen is a highly published comic book artist, writer, everything to do with them, I think you could probably say. Tell us a little bit about yourself,
Well,
Steve.
not so much the art. The art is usually left to better people. I just do the words mostly, and more talented people then fill in the rest. So yeah, I'm mainly write horror books. I've written comics. I hope to write more comics in the future. I have plans for that soon. COVID put a bit of a dent in some of that, but hopefully we'll be back on track soon. So the last couple of years have mainly been writing horror books.
What kind of horror?
I like supernatural horror. So really messed up stuff, putting characters in horrible situations and seeing how they deal with it. So I like the stories to be pretty brutal, pretty out there, and lots of supernatural elements.
So it's just in line with that, like the average viewer's probably exposure to something like that is one might say maybe something like The Shining or Paranormal Activity or that kind of jazz. Is it that kind of vibe, or is it similar?
Yeah.
Similar?
Yeah, I'd be a bit of a Stephen King fan, so obviously that's a bit of an influence. So yeah, definitely something along those lines. And yeah, usually if you read some of my stuff, you'll find something messed up in there.
Best way to be, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell me this, right? When did you first start writing?
It's about 10 years ago now, I think. So writing was always something that has been in the back of my mind from a young age. So one day I decided, to actually sit down, put something together, and get the ball rolling and all that kind of stuff. So I decided I'd sit down and write a short comic book script, and I'd show it around, look for feedback, show it to my brother, who is a comic book artist, see what people thought, and then see from there where to go from there. So sat down, wrote it, showed it around, and got positive enough feedback that I decided that I would do some more. So sat down, started putting more things together, longer scripts. And then luckily enough, there was a lad in Dublin who was looking to set up a comic book anthology. My brother was involved at the time, so he suggested that I go down and pitch a couple of ideas and see if anyone was interested. So it was a bunch of lads pitching ideas for this anthology, and I went down with, I think I had 4 ideas I went down and pitched, and 2 of them got picked for the anthology. So that was really my first experience into it, which was great. It was really, really interesting experience. So bit of luck, but yeah, and built from there.
Was that your first published works?
That was my first published work, yeah. So I'd done bits and pieces before, and then I'd have, say, someone I know kind of draw it up, and it was really just for practice and just for getting ideas out there, and they'd sit around for a while. So yeah, that was my first experience getting something published, which was fantastic. And the fact that 2 of them got picked, 2 stories got picked for the anthology was great. So yeah, it was a great experience when you see the artwork coming back from a script you wrote, and you're like, Jesus, they're my characters I wrote, and yeah, it was a really surreal experience, but yeah, it was great. And I was lucky enough in that anthology, I got to work with my brother as well. He did one of the stories, and his artwork's amazing, like super detailed. Yeah, so that was my first experience.
What was your first was say solo published work?
That was the Afterworld.
Right.
Not completely solo. There was a bit of help. So it was with a bit of help from Lightning Strike. A guy called Owen McCauley who set up Lightning Strike. Helped me out with it to get it out there. So that was my first experience, kind of managing everything and putting it all together, and which was difficult. You kind of quickly learn how hard all that end of it is, the whole organization and stuff. So this is issue 1, artwork by my brother Robert, and the idea was to do an issue maybe every 6 months or so. But because there was so much going on at the time, so much other projects and things were really busy, it didn't work out that way. We had to put it to the side for a while. So it's a world and characters that I'm planning on getting back to soon. But it was just the way it panned out. We had to put it to the side for the moment. So I'm very eager to get back to it. It's one people keep asking me about. When are you going to do more of this? And hopefully soon enough. It was one of my favorite scripts I've done, and it's one of my favorite worlds that we built. So I'm really, really eager to get back to it.
I'm just looking at the artwork here. I haven't. I'm going to hold my hands up now and say I'm not a big comic book reader, or graphic novels or any of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do. By any remote chances, your brother read 2080?
I'm sure he has read a bit of. I don't think he's the biggest fan of it. I don't think he's like mad into it, but I'm sure he has.
It's one of the ones that I would have read years and years ago when I used to frequently read more stuff, and there's a kind of shit. The artwork is reminiscent of something, I'm not quite sure, but it feels like it was in that. It could have been Eagle Comics as well, because I'm old to remember comics. Anyway, I just see a note from the producer that says Afterworld issue 2, sooner the better. So,
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, as I said, it's one people keep asking me. Have been asking me for a while. It's just the whole organization of it all, especially when you've so much other stuff going on, and you have to do the thing that's going to maybe bring in money sooner rather than later. So it's just the way it went. But yeah, hopefully soon I'll get back to it. I'm hoping like next year things get back to normal and you can meet up with people in person and plan things, and yeah, hopefully. Issue 2 is actually scripted, so it's just kind of getting the ball rolling on it.
Go to get the drawings done and go to print. Yeah, all that stuff. Just tell me this, right? Say I'm sitting there, I'm not really invested in the world of comics and all that stuff. What is the difference, or if there is one, between a comic book and a graphic novel?
Length. A graphic novel is usually often a collection of issues, or one big standalone book. So some people describe it as the difference between some graphic novels are more like a movie where it's just longer and self-contained, and then others are a collection of issues put in one, and people call it a graphic novel. So I've heard lots of different definitions of what people consider it to be, but yeah.
For me personally, I would have always said that a comic book is like an episode on TV, and a graphic novel is like what you said, like a movie.
Yeah. Some people see it that way, and that, yeah, it's a good way of looking at it, I suppose.
And just getting back to a point that I made earlier, if I said, which I did say, I don't really read comic books. Is there anything that you could say that could make me read more of them?
I would say you'll find something you like if you're into like what draws me to them is the visuals. So if you're into big cool visuals, there's lots of talent around comics. I'm not sure what I'd say if someone isn't into them, what I'd say to make them into them. I know some friends of mine have tried reading comics, and they just, it doesn't gel with them for some reason. So I would just suggest giving one a go. Find something in a sort of genre you like, and give it a shot. See how you get on. I do find a lot of comic books maybe are a bit more out there than what you might find on telly or films. They maybe get away with a bit more outrageousness. At the moment, I'm reading The Boys. I'm working my way through The Boys omnibus, and it's even more outrageous than the show is. And like, so I'm like, wow, I can't believe the show's the toned down version. So I'm very careful not to leave that just lying around the house.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad when you think of it. That you look at The Boys and everything that goes on, and it's bonkers for something that's on TV. You're looking at how does this actually get made? And
Yeah,
I have heard that you read the graphic novel. It's a whole different ball game. Like, it's mad.
There you go. Try The Boys and see
maybe I
if that rubs in. Yeah,
well.
It's really out there.
Speaking of what you're reading through, maybe I'll start with some of yours, perhaps. So, how many novels have you published so far?
I have 4 books out. I think a mixture of short story collections, novellas, and a novel. So pretty much Invincible would be my biggest one. And then Death Must Take You Now is a novella, and The Road to Any Place Else is a novella. So yeah, pretty much Invincible would be my biggest one. So that was I wanted to get that one. Yeah, that's the cover. My brother did the artwork for that as well. I was lucky enough to get him to do that.
Superb.
It's great. Yeah, so many people come over at the convention and said the cover really drew them over to check it out. So, I owe him a point or two, I suppose.
One or two.
Just one or two. Yeah.
No, actually, do you know what that would draw me over? Do you go to the conventions like Comic-Con and that?
I did when I started off with comic books. I started off writing in the Lightning Strike anthology, and I went to conventions with them. Last year at Kingdom Con was the first time I went as myself with just my books, and it was very much a tester to see how I would do, and if it went well, then I was going to do more during the year. And I was really happy. It went very, very well. Lots of great feedback. Sold well, thankfully. And then I had planned to do, I was going to try and do somewhere between 5 and 10 conventions the following year. But then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And so I have a load of books in a room somewhere that I've all printed out. I have to sit around there waiting for the conventions to come back. So I was all excited, all enthusiastic, and then no, not going anywhere for a while. But so then I just started working on more projects until I can organize all that. So then the next one, Death Must Take You Now.
Who drew that? I assume that again. That's the cover art.
That's the cover art. Yeah. My brother did that one as well. So he's done he's done a lot of artwork for me.
Your brother has a lot of talent. Let me say.
He's good, and you can see, like, you know, in his work, he just has gotten better and better over the years. He's not so long ago done work for Aliens comic.
No way.
I'd highly recommend checking that out. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Like
So
the
yeah,
Ridley Scott aliens.
yeah, for Dark Horse.
Wow. Dark Horse.
Yeah.
Wow. I know who they are, which is mental because I don't really like comics. But I mean, if you have
What do you
any
mean you don't like comics?
association,
You got Spider-Man in your background there. How do you not like comics?
yeah, come here, look. I like
You've dabbled.
I have dabbled years and years ago. I read a couple of very hyper violent Batman comics in my time.
Yeah, The Dark Knight.
I don't know. He threw some guy in a dumpster. That's the one visual that I have in my head. Like Batman threw a dude in a dumpster.
Is that your official review?
That's my
You threw a
official
man in a
review.
dumpster. 5 stars.
Yeah. Batman kills fools. Gordon Knight books.
Yes, so the first one is due to be released next week, actually. So they're going to be a series of short stories that are going to be released digital only initially. So they'll all be up on Kindle, and they'll be digital only for a while. And then there will be a print version that collects the short stories later on.
Cool.
So the first one, The Bully, is due out next week. So I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a long series, so it's going to be what I'm working on for a while, with maybe some projects in between books. So yeah, I highly recommend checking out. It's going to be another messed up horror book.
Do you release everything on Amazon?
All my stuff's up on Amazon. Yeah. So you can find all my stuff there.
And tell me this now, if you can. What's that process like? Like, do you have to contact Amazon to say, "Hey, I released books. Can I?" Or do you just set up a marketplace to sell yourself, or how does that work?
Yeah, you just set it up. Anyone can set it up. It's just once you get your head around it, once you get used to it, it becomes pretty straightforward. The likes of myself, like, so I publish through Amazon. Do everything through Amazon exclusively, because there's some nice perks, you know. So if you are, say, my digital product is only through Amazon, then you can put it on Kindle Unlimited and that kind of thing. So yeah, I find it really handy. As I said, once you get your head around it, it becomes pretty straightforward. So the process becomes easier and easier the more you get used to it. It is, you know, it's quite a bit of work managing that side of stuff, but you know, it's definitely a good option for anyone who's interested in self-publishing.
Right. I'm never going to do it, but if I ever hear of anyone, I'll say, "Hey, Amazon."
Yeah.
Tell me this now, right? You've obviously, as you say, you've written a substantial amount of stuff at this stage. What are the differences for you, we'll say, now, between sitting down to write a story for like a graphic novel or a comic, or maybe writing a novella or a short story, or even perhaps a novel?
Yeah, it's quite different, and it took a bit of getting used to. So I got so used to doing comic book scripts, and then when I wanted to do a book, it took a little getting used to, because you know it's not the same process. And a comic book is very much a collaboration. You're communicating with artists a lot. You're communicating with people a lot. They have a lot of ideas, and you know, they know what they want to do on the visual end of things. So they will, you know, they know what they're good at, you know, and they know what's a good idea and bad idea when it comes to visuals and designs and all that kind of stuff. So when you're doing a book or a novella, it's like very much yourself. um, so it is very different. And when you're writing a comic book script, especially if you know the artist, it can be quite. The way you write it can be a bit more casual, like you're just talking to a mate or whatever. It's like, guy walks into a room and he sees a robot and he's like, "Can you make him look like that robot from that movie we love? You know, the one," and stuff like that. And when you're writing a book, it's it's very different. It's it's structured differently. It's you have to get used to. It's going to be paced differently. It's going to be, all that kind of stuff. So, it's both are fun in their own kind of way. Like I do miss collaborating with people on comic books, and I'm hoping to get back to more of that soon. But I love, in a book you can just go nuts, do what you want, and a lot more. The big difference is space. On a comic book page, you've only so much space. I love writing dialogue, and I like writing like lots and lots of dialogue. It was one of the mistakes I first made when I started writing comic books is too much dialogue on the page. Like you can't see anything else. You're covering up too much. So I had to get used to that. So comic books have to be, short and sharp. Whereas a novel or a novella or whatever, you can have your characters ramble on for a bit longer, and I like that aspect. I like both, but it's a transition that took a lot of getting used to when you're used to writing scripts to suddenly, you have to come up with a new process and get used to doing things differently.
If you sit down to write anything that's a self-contained story, be it like a comic book strip, like a once-off comic book, or a novella or a novel, short story, do you conceive the end first, or do you work out the end as you do, tease it out as you go, or what's your pattern there?
No, I always like to know where I'm going with it. So sometimes the initial idea comes with the ending for a story, and you kind of work towards it. Or sometimes you have an idea of like a story starting this way, and then okay, what's the ending going to be? But before I start typing it out, I know beginning, middle, and end, because I like to know where I'm going. But I have learned over the years, if you plan something out too meticulously and too much, you run into a lot of problems. So I've learned, to have this sweet spot where it's planned just enough, but you leave room for maneuvering. Because every scene's not going to pan out exactly like you might have planned. It might go a little differently. I've learned that the best way is to give yourself a little room to adapt. And sometimes you might have an ending planned and you're going that way, and then you have an idea for it being slightly different or slightly better, and you need room to for things to change. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems, I think.
You actually read my mind with that, because I was going to ask, have you ever conceived an ending and gotten so far into it and just completely changed it? Because I remember reading sometime, possibly it was Tarantino or it could have been Rodriguez, but one of them had conceived an ending for a movie, and they went back and started filling out everything else, and by the time they got to the ending, it was complete, like a 180 flip, completely different.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've heard Tarantino say that he only ever plans up to the middle, and he'll type everything up to the middle, and then after that he'll come up with an ending. And his way of thinking, he was saying, was that you don't really know your characters or your story until you've kind of started, and then when you get to the middle, you've more of an idea of who these people are and what kind of decisions they might make. And then I've heard him say that then he plans an ending after that. I like to always know exactly where I'm going. I like to know from the start what I'm working towards. That's just the way I prefer to work. And then I've heard other people say, well, they come up with a basic premise and then just start typing and then just organically seeing where it all goes. I can't work that way. It's not how I like to work, but I do understand that people can do great stories that way too.
Yeah. Just getting back again, because obviously you've written so many varying types of, releases, comics, graphic novels, novellas, etc., etc., etc. Do you have any preference for one over the other?
Oftentimes, like when you come up with an idea, it's sometimes like that would be a good idea for a comic, or this idea would be good for a book, because both have their strengths and weaknesses. I do like going back and forth between the two. I would like to do comics a little bit more than I have done over the last year or so. I would say my preference is slightly more towards the books. It's if I only had to do one for the rest of my life, it would be books. But I love jumping back into the comics every now and again and collaborating and doing something fun. And sometimes you come up with an idea that you feel could only be a comic book, because of the visuals and the way you want to present it and all that kind of stuff. So there's ideas I can't do until I can do it as a comic, because it wouldn't really work as a book.
I wonder, oftentimes I think of as somebody who's has written a certain amount of books, and maybe you can answer this question for us, being a writer. A certain individual who had one of the most anticipated shows ever made out of his material seems to have decided to not finish his material. Do you think it's possibly one of two things? In your opinion, is he planning too meticulously, or has he just completely hit a wall?
I would feel more so. No, I don't know for sure, obviously, but it feels more like hitting a wall. Especially because the amount of time that's passed, it just feels that way. But I don't know for sure. But that's the side I'd be leaning towards.
So I feel like it's highly publicized, even that the ending is known to this individual. But I wonder, is he just struggling with how to get there?
That could be a big possibility, and I'm sure like that amount of pressure,
yes,
doesn't help.
No. And speaking of pressure, I guess it's a nice little segue into this question. Like, do you ever feel, obviously you, well, I'm assuming actually, you don't just write comics for a living, you obviously do something else as well?
I assist in a martial arts club and I'm not writing.
How is your work-life balance when you're going about writing a new story? Like, how do you unwind? Because I feel like you're very, very committed to writing. And
yeah, 100%.
Obviously, it can be, if you're, I won't say completely tunnel focused on it, but if you have so much focus on it, sometimes people find it hard to pull back. So what do you do to maintain that kind of work-life balance, and what do you do for a release when you're like, I'm done, I've had enough, I need a day?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you can run into burnout if you're, as you say, like just laser focused on something. I would definitely recommend pulling away and having your time where you just don't think about it for a while. For me, it's training. I train at a Taekwondo club. I'm an assistant instructor there, and for me, that's a big help. And it also gives me something physical to do, because I'm sitting down a lot of the day. I'm at the laptop a lot of the day, so that to me is a big release and a big help to unwind. And then of course video games also.
Of course.
Yeah.
I imagine again, much like comic books, it's been many years since I did Taekwondo, but I do remember there was a lot of stretching.
Yes.
And then a lot more stretching, and then a
And
significant
then
amount
some more
more.
stretching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that play into your ability to maintain, I suppose, that kind of, I won't say hunched over writing, but to stay in kind of the writing position for longer? Because I know myself, I do be in a hoop after 2 hours of recording.
Yeah, no, a lot of the injuries I've had over the years is not really much to do with actual training or sparring or anything. It's because my hips are in a terrible position from sitting down so much,
Yeah.
and I have to stretch a lot to undo that. Like at the end of the day, I get up off my chair, and it takes me a while before I can straighten back up again. So yeah, I've more injuries from writing than I do from taekwondo.
That's mad.
Yeah, even actually, I've had this year I had a fucking mad pain in my shoulder that developed suddenly, and I realized that it's from having my shoulder engaged over the laptop for so long. I wasn't giving it enough of a break apparently. So yeah, people think, oh, that's because of training injuries or whatever, but it's just from being fucking hunched at a laptop all day.
Do you set out a time limit, or do you, like, you don't say, for example, I'm going to sit down here for a couple of hours and I'm going to figure some stuff out, or do you just go for as long as it takes and then take a break and reappear? How do you go about that? Like, what's your planning for a day, or can you even plan for a day of writing?
Yeah, I mean, I know some people don't like to go near the laptop until they feel like it, but with me, when I started, I was always, when I reach a certain word count, I'd leave it there, and then sometimes that could be anywhere between 4 or 8 hours. Now, it's better to not be on it so long, so I don't worry too much about the word count. I'm like, I'll do it for this amount of hours, then I'll go have a break, maybe come back to it later. So that way I'm not the whole fucking day trying to reach a word count,
Yeah.
because usually you plan a word count. It's like, okay, this amount of words a day, so that'd be that amount of words a week, and I'd have it done by blah 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 blah. But now it's like, it's this amount of hours, and it gets done when it's done. Yeah, it's just better.
It takes as long as it takes. Have you ever had a mental bad case of writer's block?
I'm lucky in the way that I've always had ideas. Ideas always come to me quite easily. It's just turning them into good ideas then. So not so much writer's block. It's just a lot of like, okay, I have this idea and I have this elements, and you might spend a long time arranging them into something that you're happy with. So the way I see it is like each story is like its own puzzle, and you spend time trying to, piece it all together. But I've never, thankfully, been stuck for ideas, which was great starting off, because sometimes you have someone approach you and it's like, I want you to come up with an idea and do it this, and can you have it done in a couple of weeks? And it was like, okay. And you'd have to try and come up with something really fast and then get it done. Yeah, so I don't miss that, I have to say.
Do you have any quirks to help get the creative juices flowing? Any like mantra, or do you light incense, or do you punch a wall or something?
Yeah, punching a wall sometimes helps, especially when you're writing a scene and it's like, I can't make this scene work. What the hell is wrong with me? And you just go and punch a wall, and then you come back. But no, I find I find if you're fairly creative, and we'll say you watch a lot of TV shows, playing a lot of games, like something will spark an idea, and you'll always have something coming to you. Like even something simple, like you'll play like something that was a very tiny side quest in a game, and then you're like, that would be a great idea if you expanded it out into this and then added this element and that element. And say if you're watching a show and something sparks just a little idea, and then you kind of run with it. So if you are struggling to get creative, then I would recommend just watch a lot of stuff, read a lot of stuff, play a lot of stuff, and something's bound to spark an idea. But thankfully I've always had ideas. Maybe not all good ones, but I've had ideas.
There's an old adage from the wrestling world that Eddie Guerrero's father, Gory Guerrero, told him once. He said, "It doesn't matter if they're booing or cheering, as long as they get your name right." I think
Exactly.
it doesn't matter whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, as long as you keep having ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And I was listening to someone talk the other day about how some people are successful just because they keep going, they keep throwing stuff out, even though they're not maybe the best stuff.
Stephen
They just
King.
keep going.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, maybe some would say. Although someone said he's gotten better as he's
I
went
actually
on.
don't.
So.
I've only ever read one Stephen King book in my entire life.
What was that?
Do you know, you're putting me under pressure here now because I can't remember the name of it, but I know we were talking about it recently on the Grumpy Bro show. I have an awful head for names of things, but I will remember faces like there's no tomorrow, which is terrible.
Right.
It'll come back to me at some stage. It'll come back to me before the end of this, I guarantee you. Answer me this question, right? We've obviously gone through that you publish everything digitally on Amazon, but how important are platforms like Kindle, Playbooks, and Nook, and all those ones in today's publishing world? And I'll answer. Well, I'll part answer this by saying we obviously a few months ago we interviewed Leanne Ryan, who puts all her music onto Spotify, Apple Music, and all that. Super important for I don't want to say small artists, but not the likes of Coldplay, U2, and all that.
Yeah.
Who they're going to have when they release an album, people are just going to go out and buy it. But it's super important for people in her position in the industry currently to be able to release her music onto a platform that allows people to listen to it. I imagine it must be the same for somebody who's trying to release or self-publish or anything like that they have that kind of buffer.
Yeah. I mean, the more options for people, the better, because there's some really, really talented people out there, and the easier it is to get your stuff to people and build a fan base, then the better. Even like whenever you're at a convention, there's always these guys there with their own independent comics or whatever, and you do find some real gems in there. So the easier it is for people, the better. To get their stuff out there, and there's not as many roadblocks these days. Like there's always some way you can get something out there and start to build from there. So yeah.
Would just to touch on the conventions, would there be a lot of networking at the conventions between, would say, independent writers, and would there be a lot of I suppose, for want of a better term, hopping off each other about their releases? Like you may have an opinion on their release, they may have an opinion on yours, and it's nice to meet and discuss these things. Like, is that a common enough thing?
Yeah, meeting like-minded people and getting feedback, and sometimes you might meet people who are interested in working with you, which is great. And you start throwing ideas around, and sometimes something comes from that. And just everyone giving each other feedback and support and advice. So my first experience just as myself as at a con was Kingdom Con, and it was great. You had so many people around you kind of coming up and talking to you about your stuff and their stuff and ideas and advice on how to move forward and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's great to dive into it and network.
I mean, a comic about, I don't know, 5 guys who podcast by day and moonlight as superheroes by night. That's got a very catchy ring to
Yeah,
it.
you
I think.
reckon? Yeah, what would you call it off the top of your head?
Uh,
The
Grumpy
Grouchy
Bros,
Sisters.
Grouchy Sisters, yeah, Grouchy Sisters. There we go. Yeah, there's a winner.
There you go. Yeah, yeah.
I
Maybe I'll
yeah,
pitch that one to my brother. See if he
there
wants
you
to
go.
draw it.
See if he wants to draw. Yeah, that'd be nice. I wonder, oftentimes, and this is just one of those things, but is it the movie business is cutthroat. The music industry, to a certain degree, is cutthroat as well. Is print media cutthroat, or is it a more friendly and amicable environment?
Yeah, I find it friendly enough. I don't. I've had a pleasant experience with it. Yeah, definitely. So can't complain too much. And generally, like, I find that people are enthusiastic with like-minded people.
Mm.
In these areas. So, yeah, pleasant for me anyway.
That's anytime you have a pleasant experience is a good one. I am going to ask you to do a room tour, but before we do that,
Oh no.
I like to do this little thing, which I call a quick fire round, but it's not actually a quick fire round. I'm just going to launch a bunch of questions at you and ask you for your answers, and that's pretty
Okay.
much it. All right.
All right, go for
So,
it.
hey, here we go. In real life terms, are you Holden or Banky?
In the middle.
In the middle. All right.
Middle for diddle.
Middle. Okay. Marvel or DC for reading?
DC.
Marvel or
At
DC
the
for
moment.
watching?
I'm a little out of touch with Marvel and DC at the moment. I've been reading a lot of independent comics and Image, and so I'm not sure what the state of things is at the moment. But for a while there, it was more so DC.
Marvel or DC for watching?
Marvel.
Although go on.
I was convinced into watching the Snyder Cut on the weekend, so I might jump into that.
Just
I'll be honest.
Have you seen it yet?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't in the slightest bit interested, to be honest. But my friend has really sold me on it, so I'm going to give it a go.
Just to just to cast to one side the quick fire round for a second. I absolutely hated Justice League.
Me too. Didn't like it at all.
The worst movie I'd ever seen in a superhero movie, and I sat through Green Lantern.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I was so bored.
It was awful. It really was awful. But I have heard great things about this. Now, admittedly, it's 4 hours some long, so it's going to be
yeah.
But maybe Good Friday. Yeah, nothing else to do on Good Friday.
No, I believe it's cut into like six chapters. I think is it? So you could maybe watch it like a series.
I don't think I'd be able to do that. I haven't forgotten by the time I got to the end of it.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah, Marvel for watching. All right. But of course, we all know, really and truly, 2000 AD is where it's at. For like mainstream comics. What's your favorite superhero of all time?
Batman. I'm a massive Batman fan. It has sometimes it's been Spider-Man, but
Neon Batman.
Yeah, I think Batman's usually on top.
What's your favorite comic book storyline?
One of the more obvious ones, probably Watchmen.
Right.
I know a lot of people would pick that, but I just really like it.
That's a terrific movie there as well, actually. Watchmen.
I actually, funny enough, I liked what they did with the changes in the ending for the movie.
Watchmen is
I don't know if you've
relatively familiar with from a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one that I just really got into when I was younger and just loved it.
If you could be any superhero, how much is it Moon Knight and why?
Just a voice in my head is just saying Moonlight. That's got to be Superman just because of how powerful he is. Or actually, my absolute top maybe One Punch Man.
One Punch Man.
Yeah, who stole my luck.
Plastic Man would be a good one, I think. Remember Plastic Man?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, it was that was a cartoon. There was a Plastic Man cartoon. Yeah, I
The one that-
visions
yeah.
of him in a red long sleeve T-shirt and underpants for some reason, which was probably correct.
Sounds
God,
about
early
right.
morning Sky One cartoons. Jesus. A comic franchise, and this can be any franchise that you would like to see taken to the screen, be it the small or big screen.
Oh, something like Saga might make an interesting TV show. I haven't finished them all. I've got up to maybe volume 4 or 5. Something like that could be interesting. It's also bonkers. But it'd be interesting to see something like that, maybe.
I would have loved. Well, I would have said up to now Moon Knight, but of course they're making that, so you know.
Yeah. Are you hyped?
I am. Funny. There's actually a funny story about this. So Leo, a mutual friend of ours and member of the Grumpy Bros, he had a board game where it was about Marvel superheroes. So we were playing this board game one night, and for some bizarre reason, I just kept answering Moon Knight to questions. That was not, the answer to the question until it actually became the answer to a question. When I just said Moon
you
Knight,
got one right.
that was the answer. I got one right. So I started reading a bit about. I really love it. Anyway, we can certainly wait and see how they do with it. I feel like they're doing really well. Have you watched any of the new the stuff on Disney Plus?
I started WandaVision the other night.
It's very good.
I'm about halfway through it and loving it. Yeah, I think it's great. It's so different and odd, and then it just will suddenly take a dark turn. Yeah, really enjoying that. So I'm only halfway through it, but
it's well worth seeing out. Falcon the Winter Soldier starts really, really brightly as well. So I'm
I believe that's very good. Also,
and I'm looking forward to Loki, to be honest, and everything else that they do. I think they're doing really well with it. With the whole thing.
So far so good.
So good. I just see a director's note here that, and I quote, "freaking love Saga." So there you go.
There you go.
Director, big fan. Who would win between Batman and Iron Man?
Batman.
I wonder.
He'd find a way.
Yeah, well, yeah, he can beat Superman. Who's your favorite Avenger?
Probably Iron Man. Yeah, because he's a bit Batman-like in the way that he has gadgets and a brain. And he's also a bit of an asshole, which is great. So yeah, I'd have to go Iron Man.
Something that's probably never asked very often is, who is your favorite? And I'll go with both franchises. Who's your favorite Marvel villain?
Marvel villain. I've always liked Doctor Doom. He's one that would definitely be up there. I think just because they did a good job of him in the movies, Thanos. I think Thanos is probably the best one in the movies. Certainly the most fleshed out one, anyway. So yeah, I like a good Doctor Doom.
Who doesn't love a good Doctor Doom? What about DC?
I'd have to go with the Joker.
Yeah, me too.
Just a classic.
So, who's your favorite Joker?
Movies wise, I did love Heath Ledger's Joker. Overall, maybe I'd go with Jack Nicholson. just at the time, it was just fantastic, like what he did, and it was just great to watch. I absolutely hated the Suicide Squad Joker.
Really? I see. I didn't.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, and I didn't hate Batfleck either. I thought Ben Affleck could have gone on to be a great Batman.
I loved Ben Affleck as Batman, and you know the action scenes with him in Batman v Superman were really, really good.
Mm.
They were very like something like out of Arkham Asylum game or something, like he's jumping all over the place. But no, I thought Ben Affleck was great. But no, I can't get on board with Leto's Joker. Maybe the Snyder Cut will change my mind. I don't know.
I believe it might very well do that. I think there's a lot of extra stuff in it. Well, I'm led to believe there's extra stuff in it. So I want to ask you this question. Any of your works, if you had to pick one person to direct them, who would it be?
Oh, see, a good horror director. Oh God, that's a good question. I don't know. It'd be different people for different projects, maybe. So, like, Death Must Take You Now's got a lot of action and a lot of horror, so you need someone who could do a good mix of both. Maybe your lad who does. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
There we go.
Sure, yeah, why not? If I like the Justice League on the weekend,
well, there you
I'll
go.
ask him is he interested.
Can you give us a wall tour?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
You got just my wallpaper.
That is some quality stuff.
And there's my medals. I just accidentally gone and shot there.
Or pure accident.
Star Screen. It's the first thing I bought at a convention.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, that's my wall. And then over that direction is my PlayStation. So
anyway, do you know what, Stephen? It's been absolutely great having you on. We're not going to keep you any longer from, what could be useful time to let the creative juices flow. I mean, we've given you an idea there now for a brand new graphic novel or possibly short story. So,
there you go. You might have some royalties. You might have some royalties coming your way.
Oh God, damn, we need money to pay for Teslas, man. So if somebody wanted to find your stuff, where would they find it?
You can go to stephencareystories.com, or you can find all my stuff on Amazon in digital and print. So everything you need is there.
And you're on Twitter?
I am, yeah.
Are you on Instagram?
Yep, Stephen Carey Stories on Instagram and Stephen Carey Stories on Facebook. I have a Facebook page as well. Bit of everything everywhere.
Bit of everything. Dabbling everything. There we go. Well, Stephen, as I say, it's been great to have you on. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a million.
We will drop links to all Stephen's stuff below, down here, down below us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share the video around. It's good for the analytics. And we'll see you next time on First Person Shoot.
Ronan, I'd just like to say how much like David Boreanaz you look like. It just hit me.